Star Trek has evolved into much more than a television series throughout the years. Everyone is talking about it. The Last Frontier wasn't always a bed of roses, though. A number of the performers left the stage while others were shoved or simply vanished. Was it a more interpersonal issue, a creative disagreement, or drama? Feel free to join us in this video as we explore the true circumstances surrounding the departure of these adored actors from Star Trek and the aftermath of their departure. Who and why might surprise you. The skipper who failed to make the journey. What led Jeffrey Hunter to depart from Star Trek? Jeffrey Hunter played a very different captain, Christopher Pike. Before Captain Kirk became famous, Pike was the original captain of the starship Enterprise. The Cage, the first Star Trek pilot, and a more philosophical and contemplative look at space travel, featured Pike's command. But NBC declined on the show because they thought it was too intellectual. But they saw promise, so they granted Gene Roddenberry a rare opportunity to revamp the series. But Jeffrey Hunter had already decided by that point. He opted out of returning for the revamped series. Issues are still up for debate, with theories spanning from potential scheduling conflicts to a general disinterest in committing to a television series. William Shatner, who would later become the legendary James T. Kirk, was so cast as captain of the Enterprise. That would have been the end of Hunter's departure, but it wasn't. Ingeniously reusing Cage footage was done after production got beyond schedule in the first season. Beginning with Part 1 of the Menagerie, time was spared and Star Trek canon now include Captain Pike as Kirk's enigmatic forebear. An intriguing legacy character in the franchise was built upon what began as a behind-the-scenes solution. Strange New Worlds, Star Trek, decades later, featured Anson Mount's Pike making a significant reappearance. Okay then, Jeffrey Hunter may have left Star Trek before its formal premiere, but his brief appearance set in motion a legacy that is still developing over half a century later. While one captain departed in silence, another disembarked with a resounding roar. So what's the point of continuing to watch? This is why Denise Crosby left, to be forgotten and then to be formidable. Star Trek. The Next Generation was Denise Crosby's first acting role, the formidable and competent head of security for the Enterprise D. However, Crosby felt that something was missing from behind the scenes. Despite her potential, Tasha's scripting and screen time were so bad that she was often overshadowed. In the midst of the first season, Crosby made the bold decision to leave the show. Unhappy and underappreciated, Gene Roddenberry opted to make her departure unforgettable instead of delicately writing her out. One of the most talked about parts of the season was undoubtedly Tasha's sudden and shocking assassination in episode 23, Skin of Evil, which shocked viewers and cemented her departure. But that wasn't the end of Denise Crosby's Star Trek journey. As time went on, she made a triumphant comeback to the program. Not only in alternate timelines and memories, but also in an ambitious new character she was a part of creating. Crosby got Sela started. The TNG writers elaborated on her, as did Tasha Yar's half-Romulan daughter. Crosby finally got the multifaceted antagonist she craved in Sela, who blossomed into a cunning adversary. Even though she had left the series, Sela, the political equal of Captain Picard, finally gave Crosby a chance to make an imprint, proving that she was never really gone. After this actor who was on the list, why did he or she leave the show? Let's investigate the reasons Wesley Crusher departed the Enterprise, as told by Will Wheaton in his bittersweet farewell. As Dr. Beverly Crusher's genius son Wesley Crusher on Star Trek, The Next Generation, Will Wheaton came into the limelight early on. Unlike the fervent fan campaign that ensued while Gates McFadden was absent in Season 2, Wesley was not reciprocated with the same level of affection. When Wheaton was on the TNG, his Hollywood career came to a grinding halt, despite his earlier triumph in Stand By Me. Wheaton asked for a break from the show after he got a part in the film Valmont. However, he was rejected by the production crew. It was crucial to Wesley's plot that he not miss the episode. Wheaton put his faith in it and turned down the film, only to find out later that his character had been deleted from the script. That his efforts were unappreciated was like a slap in the face to him. Wheaton sought out more satisfying assignments after leaving The Next Generation due to the tension behind the scenes. That, however, was not the end of his tale. Wesley Crusher, one of the most controversial characters in Star Trek, returned later on, this time as a troubled Starfleet cadet who had joined the enigmatic Travelers, a path that was aptly unconventional for him. Despite his departure from the main cast, Wheaton's connection to the franchise remained strong. He is still well respected by fans of the Trek franchise and currently hosts the official post-show for the newer Star Trek series, The Ready Room. The events of his journey serve as a cautionary tale about the transient nature of character disappearances in Star Trek. After that, what transpired? Be sure to tune in to find out. Daring departure. The rationale for Michelle Forbes' rejection of Deep Space Nine. On Star Trek, Michelle Forbes made a big splash. Season 5 introduced the next generation to Ensign Ro Laren, a difficult and combative Bajoran officer. The Cardassian conquest of Badger, a major plot point in the Star Trek canon, was set in motion by her character. Deep Space Nine, the upcoming Star Trek series, would revolve around that plot, and producers had high hopes for Ro, envisioning her as the Bajoran station's second-in-command. However, Forbes had different aspirations. She declined the chance to join Deep Space Nine in favor of a career in filmmaking. She allegedly severed ties with the TNG crew as a result of her decision, and her character almost didn't get a proper send-off. Fortunately, timing and destiny played a role. A previously shelved screenplay was given new life during Season 7 when the show fell behind on episodes. When Ro Laren decided to join the Maquis instead of Starfleet, it was a shocking send-off in that episode, Preemptive Strike. One of the most iconic character deaths in Star Trek canon, it was both a risky and moving way to wrap out her story. Although Forbes was unable to participate in DS9, she has a fruitful career in television, appearing in shows such as 24, Battlestar Galactica, and True Blood. Although her time with Starfleet was short, Forbes' performance and Ro Laren's impact were significant and will be felt for a long time. If she rejected fate, then why did another person do the same? To find out, continue watching. From behind the scenes, the reasons behind Terry Farrell's departure from Deep Space Nine and Star Trek in general. Among the franchise's farewells, Deep Space Nine was particularly wrenching yet unnecessary. A beloved character, Farrell portrayed Jadzia Dax, whose combination of sagacity and power was important in forging DS9's character. The tale, however, was significantly more intricate behind the scenes. Feeling the strain of the rigorous filming schedule, Farrell requested a smaller role in the show's final season when her contract was up for renewal following Season 6. According to her, producers Rick Berman and executives at Paramount were the ones who resisted her attempts at compromise. Farrell stated in subsequent interviews, and the documentary What We Left Behind, that she was coerced into returning full-time. After her request was turned down, she decided to just leave. Despite Berman's denials, the fallout was obvious. Stephen Bear, the showrunner, was furious and disappointed when he had to kill Jadzia Dax because he had no idea about the talks. The paradox? The same Paramount execs who turned Farrell down for Star Trek went on to cast her in the main role in the comedy Becker after she left DS9. Even though her departure was met with disappointment, fans of DS9 still hold Jadzia in high esteem for the unforgettable figure she was. Soda. What happens to our heroes off-screen can have a significant impact on their on-screen destinies, as Farrell's story exemplifies. One of the actresses voluntarily left. Did the subsequent one face expulsion? Let's investigate. A medical professional's absence. The reason behind Gates McFadden's abrupt dismissal. When Dr. Beverly Crusher abruptly left Star Trek, The Next Generation after only one season, fans were taken aback. With her charming and refined performance, Gates McFadden was the show's emotional anchor, particularly as Wesley Crusher's mother. Nevertheless, her abrupt departure rendered both individuals stranded, and numerous individuals saw her sudden absence as peculiar, given that her son remained aboard the Enterprise. Rumors circulated that McFadden was at odds with the show's creators, namely with TNG head writer at the time, Maurice Hurley. She was clean about her reasons for leaving, saying, "I think I definitely pissed him off," when asked whether her relationship with Hurley was a factor. The show's early versions, she said, had a sexist and outdated portrayal of women. She complained about how her character was portrayed as having an affair with Wesley. I couldn't stop thinking about how I brought up this brilliant child. And yet, if there's any kind of issue, no matter how serious, only the male characters approach him. A scientist, she is. I am not convinced by this. Fans and co-workers were both taken aback by McFadden's sudden exit. Diana Muldaur, who took over for her as Dr. Pulaski, had a tough go of it right away. Much to McFadden's relief, the support from his fans expedited his recovery. Season 3 saw her return, and she remained for the entirety of the program's life, making cameo appearances in both the TNG films and Star Trek. Picard. Bringing her back wasn't merely a casting call. Fans enthusiastically embraced the change as a necessary course adjustment, and as soon as one physician left, another one took charge. Nevertheless, why was it done so quickly? Be sure to tune in to find out. An interim physician. Why Diana Muldaur's tenure on the NG was so brief. The producers of Star Trek. The Next Generation failed to recast Dr. Beverly Crusher when Gates McFadden was unexpectedly removed from the program following Season 1. They took her place totally. Introducing Diana Muldaur, a well-known figure in the Trek canon from her time on the original series and on planet Earth, Gene Roddenberry's telefilm. She played Dr. Catherine Pulaski in Season 2, a role that Roddenberry cast himself. The change was not easy, though, despite her skill and background. Word on the street is that Muldaur was met a less than enthusiastic reception when she joined the group, who were all closely bonded and loyal to McFadden. The sickbay was infused with Pulaski's raw, old-school vibrancy. However, not everyone was pleased by her cold and uncaring treatment of Data. Pulaski was meant to play a different type of doctor, one who was less affable and more direct, but viewers accustomed to Crusher's sympathetic character were turned off by the shift. No one has clarified why Muldaur departed after only one season. She went on to say that there was a scheduled difficulty with a telefilm reunion, including McLeod at the beginning of TNG third season. Her time on the show had also expired by that point. As Roddenberry's impact on TNG diminished, the favor he had asked for became less important. Muldaur turned away from the rear. She then went on to star in a famous film in Hollywood. Her portrayal of Rosalind Shays, who had one of the most iconic television exits, was on Law. Although her tenure on TNG was short, it was only one more chapter in a career filled with daring roles and surprising twists. What actually transpired aboard Voyager, from one abrupt farewell to another? To find out, continue watching. When Genevieve Bujold suddenly left Voyager, it was like the captain who wasn't. The brief and surprising role that Genevieve Bujold played as Star Trek's original captain. Among the most interesting cast stories in the franchise, Voyager is a must-see. The original casting call for the role of Captain Nicole Janeway was for Bujold, a renowned actress recognized for her profound acting chops. Unfortunately, it became apparent during filming of the pilot that she wasn't a good match for the part and the production. Her creative vision clashed with the requirements of Star Trek right from the beginning. The position demanded a more commanding Starfleet commander, but Buchhold's vision of Janeway as a cerebral scientist was at odds with that. Plus, she was overwhelmed by the rapid-fire nature of TV production. The complex technical discourse, short turnaround times, and long hours paid off handsomely. Bujold informed producers she wasn't right for the role and left before production had even begun the first week. It was a blessing in disguise. Even though her unanticipated departure delayed Voyager's launch, producers wasted little time casting Kate Mulgrew, who had tried out for the part before. Catherine Janeway is the new name of the character, which was altered by Mulgrew, who has a strong presence and gives a realistic performance. She later became one of the most famous Star Trek captains of all time. Even for an experienced actor like Bujold, not every role is a suitable fit, as his departure serves as a rare reminder. Leading the assault into the ultimate frontier is no easy feat, and her experience shows how unique and challenging the Star Trek universe can be. Who was Perseus Kambata as the stars faded away one by one? Let's investigate. Hollywood ignored her hairless beauty, the Star Trek adventure that was briefly undertaken by Perseus Kambata. In the tumultuous 1970s, Paramount toyed with the idea of bringing Star Trek back for multiple occasions. Star Trek II, or Phase 2 as it is more commonly known among fans, was one of the most ambitious endeavors. With the exception of Leonard Nimoy, the original cast members all agreed to return for a new TV adventure. Lieutenant Ilya, a Deltan endowed with empathetic abilities and lightning-fast mathematical abilities, together with the impassioned Captain Decker and the rational Lieutenant Zan, were brought in by the creators to fill the Spock-shaped void. The original plan for the show was to feature Ilya prominently. Perseus Kambata, who had previously competed as Femina Miss India, was chosen by the producers to play the lead role. She was the inspiration for many episodes. Includes one titled The Child that would subsequently be adapted by Star Trek: The Next Generation. However, production couldn't begin since the studio abruptly canceled the show, and the network. Paramount was adamant on turning their 2-hour pilot into Star Trek, the motion picture, so they could finally reap the benefits of their labor. With Nimoy's reappearance as Spock, Azan was left out in the cold. In a metaphysical surprise ending that kept the attention on Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, the two newcomers, Ilya and Decker, were essentially used as plot devices and then sacrificed to the enigmatic being known as V'ger. The brief appearance of Perseus Kambata in the franchise did not go unnoticed. The actress Sherilyn Connolly was not devastated by the incident, according to her biography, which presents Perseus Kambata. It had been a long, hard shoot, and her shorn head had become more famous than her acting chops in Hollywood. Her fearless performance as Ilya, one of the first Star Trek series to have an alien female protagonist, made an effect long after her departure. What shattered Grace, going from a fleeting spotlight to a low-key farewell to find out, continue watching. Grace Lee Whitney's agonizing trek, Janice Rand's quiet departure. Grace Lee Whitney's casting as Yeoman Janice Rand was decided upon long before the 1966 September debut of Star Trek. Even though she was Captain Kirk's steady and competent assistant, her role was secretly removed from the series after only a few episodes. Whitney bravely detailed in her autobiography The Longest Trek, My Tour of the Galaxy, that she had reasons to leave that had nothing to do with creativity. A guy whom she just referred to as the executive sexually attacked her. She revealed. Hosted by Desilu Studios, according to Whitney, she was let go because her presence would have served as a continual reminder to her attacker. The official explanation, though, was financial. Whitney was being considered for termination or a contract renegotiation owing to her little screen time, according to a casting document from late August 1966, which is only weeks before her assault. Whitney was one of the highest-paid supporting players. In retrospect, Jean Roddenberry's decision to remove Rand from the show was something he deeply regretted. Actually, he considered recasting Whitney as a guest star less than 2 months following her dismissal. But the plan never came to fruition, and Rand disappeared during the first 5 years of Star Trek. Rand returned subtly but significantly years later. Whitney has cameos in Star Trek, the motion picture Star Trek, Generations, and Star Trek Final Frontier. In the Voyager episode Flashback, she made a farewell appearance that paid tribute to the character and the actress. Grace Lee Whitney had long since accepted and moved on from the tragic parts of her life story when she died away in 2015. She had finally found peace. She informed this writer over lunch in 2012, a respectful conclusion to a tale that merited more, a kind of farewell message. With that, her tale came to a halt. Why was the following actor not brought back? How come Kirstie Alley never came back as Saavik? Let's figure it out. Many fans were hoping that Kirstie Alley would reprise her role as Saavik in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. But Captain Kirk said it himself. Money was the deciding factor. According to William Shatner's Star Trek movie Memories, Paramount turned down Alley's offer. Paramount's bid was really low ball. It was lower than the Star Trek offer they gave me. Therefore, I deduced that they had no interest in having me play the role. Alley gave Shatner the rundown. That was a very clear message. It wasn't worth it to keep her around. Nimoy, Leonard. He provided credence to the claim as an actor and director in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Nimoy informed Shatner that they just could not afford her. I believe the studio was willing to give her more than twice as much for Star Trek III as she had already received a respectable figure for Star Trek II as a novice. However, this was insufficient. In Star Trek III and NAV, Robin Curtis took over for Alley as Saavik. Shatner praised Curtis's acting. performing an unappreciated function. However, viewers will always remember Allie as the calm, collected Vulcan officer. Allie would ironically succeed Shelley Long on Cheers after Long departed the popular series to focus on her film career. Another torch was passed, but Star Trek fans are left to ponder what if Savick had remained in his role. Curious looks were exchanged at one departure station. What happened next that shocked supporters even more? Be sure to tune in to find out. Jennifer Lyon's departure from Star Trek. Why? Spacecraft Voyager. Star Trek's Jennifer Lyon has departed. Voyager following 3 seasons, even though Keyes was a pivotal and encouraging figure. Following the popularity of the previous generation, Voyager helped bring in a new wave of fans with its 1995 premiere. In a radical change from previous episodes, sending them on a homecoming trek that would take 7 years, played by Leanne was Keyes, a youthful Acampa who had a brief romance with Neelix, strong telepathic abilities, and a finite lifespan. Despite Kez's uniqueness and the plot potential he possessed, the character failed to resonate with viewers. Kez personified the prototypical young, bright crew member, just as Wesley Crusher had done before her, but without quite as much hostility from the crowd. Though he wasn't one of the fan favorites, the writers couldn't ignore his dwindling popularity. After Kes has an encounter with Species 8472 in Season 4's A Gift, his developing psychic powers start to spin out of hand. Kes chooses to depart Voyager after seeing she poses a danger to the people she has grown to care about, leaving the galaxy as an energy creature. Her final destination remained a mystery as she bid a heartfelt farewell. But plot limitations weren't the only reason she left. Lyon left for multiple reasons that were behind the scenes. A subsequent admission from showrunners Rick Berman and Jerry Taylor confirmed that the Neelix-Keyes romance had been a misstep, and that the writers had reached a creative impasse despite Lyon's abilities. It became more difficult to include Kez into subsequent arcs due to the restricted long-term story potential caused by the Acampa's brief 9-year rule. Still, everyone on set and in the audience thought Leanne did a fantastic job. There were many who thought her exit paved the way for Jerry Ryan's 7 of 9, a character who drastically altered the show and brought in more viewers. Even if Keyes didn't have the stamina of other Star Trek characters, her departure was a sad point in Voyager's history and a reminder that good ideas might fizzle out if the creative forces aren't quite right. Unlike the other performers who could have walked away or been fired, this one had no choice. Why? Let's investigate. Anton Yelchin's untimely demise during his prime. Anthony Yelchin. Tragically, the superb actor who injected the revived Star Trek films with youthful charm and vibrancy as Pavel Chekhov passed away abruptly in June 2016. The strange tragedy that killed Yelchin at the age of 27 in his Los Angeles residence sent shockwaves through Hollywood and devastated the star. Trek community. The incident took place at the crack of dawn. Yelchin got out of his car, drove his 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee down his steep driveway when it started rolling backwards. A security gate and a brick post box pillar were crushed under the weight of the vehicle, and he was crushed to death. Friends were worried when the young actor didn't show up for a practice and broke the terrible news to him at his house. The cause of death was determined to be blunt traumatic asphyxia by the coroner, and the Los Angeles Police Department characterized it as a terrible accident. The third installment in the revived film series, Star Trek Beyond, had recently wrapped filming when Yelchin passed away. Warmth, humor, and intelligence characterized his presentation of the Chekhov popularized by Walter Koenig. I am still in shock. Rest in peace, Anton, Star Trek Beyond director Justin Lin said in an expression of his grief. Everyone who is lucky enough to know you will carry your spirit and enthusiasm with them forever. Co-workers and actors paid tribute in droves. This is JJ. William Shatner, the original Captain Kirk, took to social media to express his sorrow over the loss of such a talented young man. The revelation that the model of Jeep involved in the accident had been under investigation for its controversial electronic shifter added further heartbreak. Abrams, who directed Yelchin in the first 2 Star Trek reboots, wrote John Cho, who played Sulu, wrote, and even William Shatner, who directed the first 2 Star Trek reboots, took to social media to express his sorrow. In Yelchin's case, no clear relationship was officially proven. However, the tragedy prompted public outcry and increased scrutiny over the construction of the vehicle. Many in the entertainment world and among his fans shared Jodie Foster's description of Yelchin, who she had directed in 2011's The Beaver, as someone who had gone from being a promising kid actor to a rising star. The tragic death of Anton Yelchin was more than the passing of a gifted actor. A clever and inquisitive soul with seemingly endless potential lay in that silence. The tragic loss of Chekhov and the light he brought to Star Trek are both brought to light by his performance. So, how did Star Trek's legacy live on? Be sure to tune in to find out. A Star Trek legacy? No, Star Trek is not only a TV show. Boldly moving beyond its origins in the 1960s, it has become a cultural phenomenon. Starting with just one series, Gene Roddenberry built the brand into one of the most successful and well-known media conglomerates of all time. It has impacted many mediums and languages, including cinema, literature, comics, video games, and television, and has won over followers of all ages, impacting both the science fiction and pop culture landscapes. Venues. Like 2 days after its initial airing on CTV in Canada, the first Star Trek series premiered on NBC in the United States. The series took place in the year 2345 and chronicled the voyages of the starship USS Enterprise as it encountered alien species and strange new worlds. C.S. Lewis's nautical exploits served as an inspiration to Roddenberry. Forster's Horatio Hornblower, Gulliver's Travel social satire, Forbidden Planet's future vision, and the framework of TV westerns like Wagon Train. An exploration into space and an opportunity to ponder the essence of humanity were both provided by his creation. Star Trek refuses to fade into oblivion despite being canceled after only 3 seasons. Returning with the original cast, it was resurrected as an animated series and 6 feature films. The Next Generation, which debuted in the late 1980s and took place a century after the original, marked the beginning of a television revival. Numerous spin-off shows including Enterprise, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine would emerge during that time, in addition to 4 feature films that revolved around the crew of Captain Picard. During the year 2009, new films featuring reimagined versions of familiar characters were the product of a cinematic relaunch that Abrams launched with the Kelvin timeline serving as the backdrop. Nevertheless, that was far from the last. Star Trek made a triumphant return to television in 2017 with a slew of new shows based on the original era, several of which were directed at younger audiences and streamed on internet sites such as Strange New Worlds, Prodigy, Lower Decks, Short Treks, Discovery, and Picard. However, Star Trek is much more than that. Everyone lives here. Conventions, memorabilia, fan films, and other pursuits have allowed fans, who are lovingly referred to as Trekkies or Trekkers, to keep the fantasy alive. From a 10-year Las Vegas attraction to traveling museum displays, Star Trek's influence is evident everywhere. The Klingon language, which was created just for the show, has subsequently been translated, studied, and spoken globally. Above all else, Star Trek has never been behind the times. The film has received high marks for depicting a future in which society has triumphed over numerous societal divisions. As a reflection of the civil rights movement's popular theme of inclusion, the original series featured one of the first multiracial casts on television. Star Trek is more than just a show because of its enduring legacy. A sign of hope, possibility, and the power of the imagination that never fades? How do you feel about these actors and the reasons behind their departure from Star Trek? Post a comment telling us what you think. Seeing this video has my gratitude. Hopefully you were captivated by it. Please subscribe and like the video. To see the next video and read up on your favorite celeb news, click here, where we meet next.